Audra was born and raised here in downtown Honolulu and attended St. Andrew's Priory. She started her college career at Scripps College in Southern California. Audra returned to the University of Hawaii at Manoa to further her studies in the East Asian Studies Department and the Art Department. During her years at UH Manoa, she contributed to the Ka Leo o Hawaii student newspaper with a semi-autobiographical comic called Culture Shock about her college experiences. In 1999, she won the Scripps Howard Foundation Charles M. Schultz Award for college cartooning. After graduating, she spent 1 year in Kyushu teaching English before she returned to Southern California to work as a freelance colorist for Antarctic Press, Marvel, and Udon Entertainment. Back in Hawaii in 2006, Audra and her husband Scott launched their online comic, Nemu Nemu, which just celebrated their 10th anniversary. Audra's comics have also been featured in the East Oahu Sun and currently runs every Sunday in the Honolulu Star-Advertiser.
All right, hi everyone. Thank you, Stephen, for that great introduction into what manga is. I'm going to be talking a little bit more about what manga is in a much more global sense. As we understand it so far, manga are comics that are from Japan. And we're basically just talking about the idea of the combination of art and story in a sequential format that we are familiar with. All right, these are some of the most popular depictions of what we understand of as manga. We have series like Sailor Moon, which was I guess you could say one of the very first magical girl series that really made a huge impact here in America. We also have series like Attack on Titan and all of the Shonen Jump series that I guess fans might be most familiar with because it also has anime adaptations that show up on Cartoon Network and other television stations. When we look at these images, these are what comes to mind when we think about manga. The characters with big eyes, expressive mouths, comics that are often printed in black and white, and they have longer form stories than what we're commonly familiar with when we look at superhero comics, for example, which usually come in floppies of roughly 20-something pages and are sold monthly or so. Or other types like newspaper comics, like editorial comics, or comics that we might see in our Sunday paper. But, well, if we step back a little bit, manga here in the West has been used as a term specifically for marketing. I think probably Jason might talk a little bit more about this in depth, but maybe in the late 90s, early 2000s, Tokyo Pop had entered the market, and they wanted to really push manga as an exotic and different format of comics, something that you could probably see in your local bookstore or in your library. It was an easy way to categorize something separate within the comics genre, so to speak. But it also ran into the problem of being a problematic definition. And what I mean by problematic is with the development of, with the manga wave of that early 2000s, well, when you take a look at this becomes known as a style. We have characters with the big eyes and the long flowy hair, but this is just a very small snapshot of what is available out there in terms of Japanese comics. These are the most popular representations that we're most familiar with, but there are topics that range from like boy comics, girl comics, we have erotic comics, we have horror comics. There's something literally out there for everyone, and this is just a small portion of what's currently available. And then to kind of add to the fire, in the early 2000s, Tokyo Pop had run a contest where it was soliciting artists for their Rising Stars of Manga competition. And this was an opportunity for Tokyo Pop to get new licenses to diversify their own lineup of work. But on the other hand, it was an opportunity for creators who were inspired by manga to create their own works to be published. And in some cases, some did better than others. Some of these might look a little bit more familiar than others, but they're the very first wave of creators inspired by manga to, well, be part of the OEL manga wave in a sense. And because of this, it kind of caused a rift in the community, so to speak. You'll have one group of people who have been, I guess, led to believe that manga is specifically comics from Japan by Japanese artists. But, well, with the influx of these new comics, independent and published through Tokyo Pop, well, it's a little bit more gray. For enthusiasts, as I'll call them, they were a little bit more broad in their acceptance of what is out there. If it looks like manga, it feels like manga, it reads like manga, then I guess as long as I like the style, I guess I can kind of call it manga. And for the purpose of our talk here, I think we're going to kind of go down this route. So here are some examples of how we have creators that technically cross these borders. I have a friend of mine, her name is Fusu Chin, and she is a creator from Singapore, and she does comics for Japan's Comic Walker, which is like a mobile comic service. They're 4-panel comics, they're drawn in black and white, and they're published online in Japanese. She recently had all of her comics collected, and it was printed in Japan in Japanese for a Japanese audience under Kadokawa. And this is her book that was just released last month. We also have creators like Kurihiru, who are it's an illustrative team from, I believe, Hokkaido. And they're licensed by American companies, such as Nickelodeon for their Avatar lineup, as well as Marvel. I believe they do Star Wars stuff too, and Disney Works. And their work is absolutely fantastic. And then we have creators like Ken Nimura, who are, I believe he's a Japanese-Brazilian artist, and he creates his own, I guess you could call them graphic novels, but they're published in Japanese, English, and in his home country of Brazil. Speaking of Rising Stars of Manga, this is an example from one of my online peers. Her name is Rem, and her fiance is Bikuri, that's their pen names. She was the original, actually this team was the original winners of the very first Rising Stars of Manga. And they recently just started, like about a year ago, their own online webcomic. And this is actually one of her pages. It looks a lot like the manga that you will see in a store if you just open the book. It's printed in black, well, it's published in black and white, and it's posted online. But her work is really fantastic, and it's a really great representation of some of the people here stateside who have been highly influenced by manga and want to create their own. This is another artist who's just a different example. His name is Boulet, and he's from France. He creates a lot of autobiographical comics online, but he's also known as a comic artist and an illustrator. And he wears his influences on his sleeve when he experiments with how he does his storytelling. So these are just some examples that he particularly loves. And then there's myself. This is my comic. This is actually our 10th anniversary of creating Nemu Nemu. It started back in 2006 as a black and white comic, 4 panels, and I'll come back to that in a little bit too. But over the years, it's kind of evolved and my storytelling has changed, but I still wear my particular influences quite heavily on my sleeve. As you can see, these are my characters, and this is just one way of how I draw them. So, for the purpose of our talk, let's just say that But manga are sequential stories created in that aesthetic that reflects, examines, and or reinforces, and in this case, Japan's societal values. And when I talk about societal values, I'm talking in the sense of we as creators outside of Japan look at these titles and we want to incorporate what we see in the things that we do, how we draw, how we tell our stories. Some of the things that kind of come to mind at the top of my head are things like that sense of teamwork, sense of perseverance, characters that will stick to their beliefs and they will persevere to the end. We also have things like sensitivity to nature and the passing of time being recorded through many panels. And in some cases, Japan's ideals of beauty, the big eyes and the small mouth with the long glossy hair. And one more thing that I'd like to add to that list is the perfection of the craft. Using tools, in some cases pen and nibs, metal nibs, and on paper to create fantastic works of art, and spending a lot of time to master that art. If you can take a look at the Takayami exhibit that's at the front of the museum, you will see just how fantastic her work is, and is definitely a reflection of her many hours spent and perfection of her craft. So, to close, let's just say for our talk that manga is becoming a global construct, but at the heart, it reflects Japan's values that we personally idealize, and in turn, it influences the work that we create. So, thank you.